afternoon and welcome back to the Royal Daily Tea. So we're going to kick off a new series called The Heir and the Spare, and the dynamics between the two, their relationships, not only with each other, but how they act throughout history, going back 4 generations for the British royal family. It is very interesting to watch and observe the dynamics and the differences between the one who wears the crown and the spare. And it's like history is constantly repeating itself, except for the generation that started this whole twist in the royal family. And we will get into that very shortly. So now sit back and relax, and let's get into this series. So there is an old saying, heavy is the head who wears the crown. And when you're dealing with the royal family, especially with the heir and the spare, there is always a major difference between the one who will wear the crown and the one who will not. It's like it plays out like a record player, different people, different generations, but it's almost a constant rhetoric of the same thing happening. So we're going to start back with Queen Elizabeth's father, King George VI. King George VI was meant to be a spare to the throne. He was not the heir to the throne, so he always grew up in the shadow of his older brother because his older brother was to be king. Unfortunately, his brother was this gorgeous, very good-looking, dynamic, a man who loved to party, loved the limelight, but did not necessarily want the responsibility of the crown. He was an heir who wanted to be a spare. So basically, he decided in 1936 that he was going to abdicate his throne for the love of Wallis Simpson, who we all know was the love of his life. She was an American, twice divorced woman. Many people were very disappointed in him for choosing a woman, an American, over being king. He was born to be king, and he gave up his duty for the woman he loved. So in 1936, he abdicated the throne to Mary Wallis Simpson. So this was the only time in history a king has actually abdicated the throne and basically changed the entire face and fate of the British royal family, because now Princess Elizabeth will become Queen Elizabeth. And that was not actually supposed to happen. Her father was really never meant to be king. But this is the first time in the history where the heir to the throne wanted to be the spare to the throne, and he left his responsibility. And this caused a nightmare for Queen Elizabeth because she was not prepared to be queen. This was not what she was born into. This is not what she expected. It was a shock to the entire royal family, especially to her father. It has been said that Queen Elizabeth's father was a very meek man. He had a stuttering problem. He was very quiet and reserved. He was not something you would think of as a world leader or a king. So when he was thrust into the limelight and now had to become king because his brother basically walked away from the royal family to marry Wallis Simpson, this really caused havoc on her father, who unfortunately passed away at the age of 57. And Elizabeth, it is said, hated her uncle. She blamed him for the death of her father, because this job was so stressful, she felt it killed him. So at the age of 25, Elizabeth is now the Queen of England. And she took this role very seriously. Even though she wasn't technically born to be the future queen, she was now going to be the Queen of England. So she is now the heir, and her sister, Princess Margaret, is now the spare. Now, these two sisters were beautiful. To me, I always thought they looked like glamorous superstars, movie stars. But of course, between the two of them, her younger sister, Margaret, was definitely the flashier of the two, the more glamorous of the two. She did have that movie star appeal to her. She was a gorgeous woman. And there's a scene in the series The Crown, whether it's true or not, where Elizabeth went to her father and said, please, please, can Margaret be queen? I don't want to be queen. I'm very soft-spoken. I'm awkward. I'm shy. I like to hang out with my horses. Can we please have Margaret, who is very fashionable and beautiful and outgoing? Can we make her the queen? And her father said, no, it is your responsibility. It is your destiny. So ever since then, Margaret has grown up in her sister's shadow as the spare to the queen. And Margaret, being the beautiful, glamorous, outgoing, stylish, movie star looking woman, of course she didn't want to play second fiddle to her sister. But being the spare to the heir has a lot of perks. When you're the spare, you get all the luxuries and the glamour and the pomp and the circumstance that the heir has, but you don't have the responsibility. You know, heavy is the head that wears the crown, but the one who's second in command, the spare, they generally don't, have to become the heir, except for in the case of Elizabeth's father. So they're usually safe. They can go out and party, and they get to live life the way that the heir to the throne doesn't. And, in The Crown, it shows Elizabeth is very jealous of her sister because her sister gets to be glamorous and beautiful and have fun. And Elizabeth, unfortunately, she's the queen. She has to devote her entire life to the crown because the crown always comes first and the crown always wins. I shared a scene that, came from The Crown when Elizabeth realized she is now queen on the deathbed of her father, and her grandmother comes in, who she always had to curtsy to, and she curtsied in front of her, and that was the moment a queen was made, and it was such a powerful scene. So now she's Queen Elizabeth, and she's 25 years old. Can you imagine how you were at 25, and now you're a queen of a nation? That's a very young age to have that kind of responsibility. Prince Charles. Prince Charles, when he was a young man, fell in love with Camilla. He wanted to marry Camilla, but for whatever reason, the royal family, his mother, Prince Philip, did not agree with his choice of Camilla as a wife. So they forced Charles to give up the love of his life and to marry Princess Diana. Now, I love Princess Diana. I am a huge fan of Princess Diana. But just think, if Edward VIII would not have abdicated the throne to his brother, Queen Elizabeth's father, Princess Diana may never have happened to the royal family. Because Prince Charles would not have been the heir to the throne. He probably would have been about 6th or 7th in line to the throne. He might have married Camilla at that point, right? But because he's the future King of England now, he is now the heir to the throne. His mother, who is now Queen of England, he now has to step up as her firstborn. And he had to choose Diana over Camilla, because Diana was more a suitable bride for a future king. So we wouldn't have Prince William and Prince Harry. We wouldn't have had Princess Diana. But the fate of history changed all that back, 3 generations before, when Queen Elizabeth's uncle abdicated the throne. This changed the trajectory of the royal family. So now we have Charles, who is the heir to the throne, having to forfeit the love of his life, Camilla, and marry a more suitable virgin bride, Princess Diana. So now we have Princess Diana, who of course gave birth to Prince William and Prince Harry. Again, we have the heir and the spare to the throne. But just like William and Harry, Charles also has a brother, Prince Andrew. Now, we all know about Prince Andrew. He was known as Randy Andy. Back in the 70s and 80s, he was quite the ladies' man. Again, Prince Andrew has indulged and lived a life of leisure with all of the titles and the money and the privileges that, a prince can have without the responsibility of being the heir to the throne. So he was able to marry, Sarah Ferguson. He was able to make, a lot of his own choices because he was the spare to the heir. So now we're back to William and Harry, and we feel like history is kind of repeating itself. When you look at William, he lives a life of duty. He married Kate Middleton, a very suitable woman. He spent the last 10 years serving his queen and country. He lost his mother, Princess Diana, in 1997, the same as Prince Harry. But William has had a role of duty. He is the next in line after his father to become King of England. So he has had to live his life differently than Harry has had to live his life. Harry was wild Harry. We all love Harry. Harry's out in Vegas having fun, doing what Harry wants to do, right? Harry's always been a little crazy. We've always loved Harry. But Harry didn't have the responsibility that his brother has. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. But that was never Harry. Harry could afford to be funny and jolly and do what he wanted. He was allowed to marry a, technically twice married American actress in Meghan Markle. Now, do you think William would have been able to marry a Meghan Markle? That would have been a no. That would have been a no. But Harry, being sixth in line, he had a little bit more leniency because he's the spare to the throne. He's not the heir to the throne. So a lot of people compare Harry and Meghan to his grand uncle who married Wallis Simpson, Edward VIII. Now, there are a lot of similarities between the two couples. Both of them married American women that were previously, divorced. They were also not well-liked women. And both of them walked away from the royal family with their women. So the differences is that Edward VIII was actually the heir to the throne who wanted to be the spare. Harry has always been the spare. It is rumored that Wallis Simpson actually did not want him to abdicate. She was the most hated woman in England. She was mortified that he gave up his kingdom, basically, for her. She begged him, please do not do this. But he really wanted to be out of the royal line. He wanted to go be free and live like the spare and party and live a life of leisure. So he abdicated for his brother, who is Queen Elizabeth's father, and married Wallis Simpson, the twice divorced American socialite. And they pretty much were kind of like outcasts during their entire life living out in Europe, and they had a lot of controversy. And it's reminding me a lot of Harry and Meghan. People used to love Harry. He was Princess Diana's son, and she was the princess, of the people. I loved Diana, I loved Harry, I loved William. But when he got with Meghan, he changed. He became this very whiny, privileged, outspoken, woke prince of hypocrisy, constantly cashing in on the death of his mother, thumbed his nose at the royal family, moved to Hollywood. He's all about making money with Netflix and Spotify, talking about mental health. I mean, okay, do what you got to do. But then when you turn around and you bag on your royal family, people who have given you such privilege and a title that you continue to use and cash in, because let's be honest, without the titles, Harry and Meghan are nothing. They're nothing. Meghan is a B to C level actress at best, who's nearing 40 and didn't have a great acting career. Yeah, she was on Suits, but that's kind of a C level cable show. She didn't really have a lot of movies or any other acting parts. They were all a little bit walk-on parts. Not to be mean, but she was not a Grace Kelly. Grace Kelly was an actress. She was a movie star. She was an Oscar-winning Hollywood movie star that was in major blockbuster films and gave up her career to marry the Prince of Monaco. Meghan Markle, however, was a nearing 40-year-old actress who pretty much had a failure to launch into Hollywood stardom. She was a B, C level list actress. Nothing wrong with it, but she really wasn't going anywhere in her career. Harry was her meal ticket. He is what skyrocketed her to worldwide fame. So now she got her title, she got the money, she has the fame, and they went off to Hollywood to sell their name and their titles to the highest bidder. And Harry's just following along behind her because he's the spare to the throne. He couldn't go any higher. I mean, he's going to be Prince Harry, the Duke of Sussex, but he's never going to be king. I mean, imagine being in a role in your entire life where you're never going to grow or get to a higher level. You're just going to always be at the same level. I mean, that would be boring. So now he gets to go to Hollywood and he could be whatever he wants to be. Congratulations. However, you are a royal prince and you gave all of your responsibilities up to go be this little party playboy who likes to give speeches and gets paid ridiculous amounts of money to sit with Oprah and your other celebrity friends. Kind of reminds me of King Edward VIII, right? The playboy who became the black sheep of the royal family. He's out living the jet set life. But the difference between them is, back then we didn't have social media. So there was a lot of things about them in the press that wasn't very complimentary. I mean, he did some questionable things, hung out with some questionable people, but we didn't hear about them as much because, they didn't have social media back then. Now, Harry and Meghan actually put stuff out themselves to the press, which is different. Normally, the royal family doesn't, do that. So it's just interesting to see the 4 generations of the heir and the spare and how they kind of play out the same. You had the 2 brothers, King George VI and Edward VIII, except for that was the one time the heir wanted to be the spare and they swapped places. Then you had Queen Elizabeth and her sister, Princess Margaret. The heir who dutifully has run this country or ran Britain for 69 years, always put the crown above her personal feelings. And Margaret was the superstar, glamorous party girl who got to live life a lot more than Elizabeth did. Then you had Prince Charles and Prince Andrew. Again, Prince Charles sacrificed the woman he wanted to marry, which was Camilla. He had to wait 30 plus years to be able to marry her. Now, whether you like Camilla or Charles, you have to admit that they had a love story and that they finally got to be together like 30 years after they met. They finally got to be together, which I feel he deserved. he deserved to marry the woman he wanted to be with, just like his grand uncle. He gave up a whole kingdom to marry the woman he wanted, but Charles was not given that choice. And believe me, the queen was not about to let that happen again. She really hated her uncle because she felt he murdered her father because of the stress he was under when he had to become king. So there's no way in heck she's going to let Charles ruin that. No, no, no. She's like, you're giving up Camilla, and we're doing this right. And Charles obeyed. Charles could have walked away and said, hey, Andrew, I'm leaving you the ropes. You could be the king. I'm going to go marry Camilla. F you. I'm out. I'm going to be like my uncle. And he was actually kind of close to his uncle, which really chapped her hide, by the way, because she hated that man so much, or his granduncle. Yeah. So Charles obeyed the duty and married Princess Diana, and did what he was supposed to do. He put the crown above his feelings. He followed what he was supposed to do. Now, of course, he did have an affair with Camilla, but I mean, in a way, I kind of can't blame him. Unfortunately, Princess Diana was an innocent pawn in that game. She didn't deserve to have that happen to her, but there was a love story that just couldn't be quashed. There was a love between Camilla and Charles, whether you like them or not. In a way, I kind of like the fact that they've loved each other all these years, and he couldn't give her up. He couldn't give her up, so he married Diana because that was his duty, but his heart belonged to Camilla. Unfortunately for Diana, she loved Charles. She wanted to be with Charles. She really wanted to make it work, but she didn't know that Camilla was still going to be there. She didn't have any idea. She was 19 years old. She was a very young woman, very innocent, thrown into this life, but regardless, she did her duty. She became the people's princess, and she had her two sons, the heir and the spare, Prince William and Harry, the two beloved sons that we've all watched grow up. And we've seen the difference between Prince William has done a wonderful job, and he has made his mother proud. He's made his country proud. He is a wonderful, exemplary example of a man who puts his country and his duty above his own feelings. He married Kate, a very presentable woman, to become a future queen or princess consort, because he is going to be king one day. And then you have Harry, who acts like the typical royal spare to the throne, who basically thumbed his nose up, effed his family, basically abandoned his country, abandoned his title, abandoned his duties, responsibilities. Even though he doesn't have the responsibility that William has, he still wanted to go off and have fun, right? He wanted to live the life like his grand uncle did. So now we have Harry and Meghan kind of repeating history, and it's just interesting to watch. And of course, we have Prince Andrew, who, got himself in some hot water with the Epstein. Of course, he hasn't paid the price for that, but he's the spare who kind of gets away with everything. He was kind of known as the Queen's favorite son. But you have people like Queen Elizabeth, Prince Charles, Prince William. These are the heirs to the throne, and how they act differently than their siblings, who are the spares. So I really feel like, heavy is the head who wears the crown, you can see the differences between the ones who were born into duty and the ones who are not. And Harry is just, repeating history as a royal spare. So time will tell how this will play out, but there's just very weird similarities between him and his grand uncle and himself, and Wallis Simpson and the Meghan Markle. It's just so many similarities, but it's like history constantly repeats itself. So we'll have to see with Prince George and Prince Louis if that's going to be another heir and spare situation when William's boys grow up. But yeah, I just find it very interesting how history has played out in this royal family with the heirs and the spares. I hope you enjoyed this little video. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. Make sure you get me on TikTok and on Instagram. Thanks, guys, and have an awesome day.